Hi, everyone. Welcome today as we at Rutgers University celebrate Women's History Month by celebrating some amazing Rutgers women. All attendees have been placed on mute for the duration. Really encourage everyone to use the chat feature on this as well. My name is Lisa Kaplowitz. I am a professor here at Rutgers Business School teaching finance, and I'm also the co-founder and executive director of our Rutgers Center for Women in Business. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you a quick overview. It's Women's History Month, and Rutgers has this amazing consortium of 10 institutes and centers really driving women's leadership. It's called the Institute of Women's Leadership. We are dedicated to advancing women on behalf of gender equity and gender equality. So please check out all of the different centers and institutes that exist here on the Rutgers campus, not only for students, but for alumni as well. I am part of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business. We work in partnership with companies and organizations to develop women leaders for tomorrow's evolving workforce. Our mission is through education, opportunity, and thought leadership. We remove barriers, build community, and empower women with confidence and skills to succeed as business leaders. Focusing on mid-career women, the intersection of not only gender, but our other identifiers as well. And then working for men to not only be part of the conversation, but part of the solution. This is our QR code to get to our LinkedIn page. Tomorrow is Rutgers Giving Day, and so I want to encourage everyone to participate in that as well, and I'll talk more about that at the end. And with that, I want to introduce our esteemed panelists and really start the conversation. I'm going to go where I see you all on my screen, if that's okay. First is Robin Lee. She is a principal at GGV Capital, focuses on investments in consumer, retail, new digital economy. She has been on the board of directors of Bustle Digital Group, Flyber, Glow Concept, Grub Market, Adecco, and is a former board member of Lively, which was acquired by Wackle in 2019. She is actively involved or a board observer with a number of other boards of companies you've all heard of, including Boxed and Chief and Fishbowl and Poshmark. She created Evolving E, which is a highly engaged community of top entrepreneurs and executives. And she is a proud Rutgers graduate, earning her degree in economics and art history. Thank you, Robin. Next, I have Shauja Dixit.
Yeah, you got it.
Dixit, sorry about that. Shauja Dixit. She is an accomplished physician. I love that all of our panelists here have gone through kind of different career paths. So not only is she accomplished physician, but she's also an entrepreneur. She founded and profitably, as a finance professor, I love profitably, scaled Apex Bio, a life sciences service company, and has recently launched a women's health digital therapeutics company. She has over 15 years of industry experience serving in different aspects of healthcare, from payers and providers, HITs, Big Four consulting firms, and pharma. She has been recognized as a top 50 big data leader and was awarded the GE Innovators Award in 2009 and has a lot of different patents for her work by USPTO. She has a master's degree from Rutgers in medical informatics, as well as numerous other degrees, and is passionate about advancing opportunities for girls' education and women in science. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Next, I have Kim Taylor. She is Vice President and Assistant General Counsel of JP Morgan and their Asset Management Global Alternatives Group. She advises private funds investing in infrastructure and real estate and provides legal support for the firm's ESG initiatives, for those who don't know, environmental, social, and governance. She is a proud Rutgers graduate, earning her JD, her law degree from Rutgers University, and has her BA from Stanford. Thank you for joining us, Kim.
Thank you.
And last but not least is Amy Towers, who bleeds Rutgers through and through, is on our board of governors, our board of trustees, I believe, is the founder of Induna Foundation and has literally devoted her life to helping children, primarily in Africa, focusing on food security, education, healthcare, human rights. She co-founded Glenview Capital Partners and served as their COO prior to founding Induna Foundation. She's extensively involved on the Human Rights Watch, is on multiple boards, including the U.S. Fund for UNICEF, was honored by the International Center for Research on Women, and with the Champions of Change Global Citizen Award, was honored by National Fish and Wildlife Foundation for her work in saving the black rhino. And in June 2020, she was confirmed to our Board of Governors as well. Thank you, Amy, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't I start with you, since you just got yourself off mute. And I'd love everyone, I rattled off some of your accomplishments, but I can never do it justice. I love hearing about the stories. So just quickly, can you tell everyone a little bit about your journey?
Sure, absolutely. I'm delighted to have everybody here. It's a hard environment because we can't see you. So it's one of these times where you're talking into the screen and you sort of lose that personal connection that I like to have. So I'm glad we have an opportunity to sort of share a little bit about ourselves. I think it's true, as you mentioned, Lisa, in this day and age, there's no straight path. I actually went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I'm from Wisconsin, and I was a French major. And my father said, there's no way I'm paying for you to be a French major because they don't get jobs and you're not moving home. So get yourself into the business school. And so I ended up with a finance and French major, and of course had all these beautiful aspirations of doing some sort of high level, sexy international finance. And then the 90s sort of burned out and things like that. So I had a great banking career in Chicago, started in Chicago, then moved to Hong Kong, then New York. Had the privilege of starting a hedge fund from the ground up in 1999, starting with $250 million in capital. And I left in 2007 when it was a multi-billion-dollar entity. By that time, I had 4 sons as well. And it was absolutely impossible to be COO of a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund and raise my sons in the way that I wanted to. So made a career change there and have been delighted ever since. And now my kids are getting out of the house. And so I feel like I'm on the precipice, if you will. I shouldn't say that, it's like a negative connotation. The launching off point of perhaps a third phase in my career as well.
Thank you, Amy. Robin.
Hi, so I was a Rutgers graduate. I'm originally from Hong Kong, though. So I'm a first-generation immigrant here with my parents. We immigrated to Long Island and then shortly after New Jersey. And actually all my cousins also went to Rutgers, so we kind of all went around the same time. Very close to home, actually, was a commuter student. And so I had commuted, from East Brunswick, very close to the New Brunswick campus. I really wanted to go to art school. My parents were like, no. So I ended up doing an art history major at Rutgers and also econ, because they were like, you kind of have to do more. So I did that and actually wanted to do the business school during undergrad, but they couldn't accommodate for your art classes. And so it ended up working out that way. I actually worked 3 jobs during school. My 4-year school, I did everything in 3 years, and then had the privilege to spend time taking any classes I want my 4th year, but paid my way through school that way. And then went to Teach for America for a few years after, teaching special ed and general education, and really wanted to give back, just being a first-generation immigrant and just how lucky I was to get the education I got. Ended up After that, going to business school, I went to the University of Chicago, Business School of Business. And from there, I fell in love with Starbucks entrepreneurship and been in venture capital ever since. And now I am our New York office. So, and about to have my second child in a week. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you for being here with us, because I know it's an extremely busy time on multiple levels. Xiaojia, tell us about your journey.
Sure, thank you. To say that the journey of everyone on this panel is non-linear is an understatement, Lisa. So nicely said. So, you know, I'm a physician by background. I did my initial training in India and then came to US about 21 years back. I started actually studying at Rutgers at that time. It was UMDNJ, University of Medicine Dentistry then, you know, and became actually, while I was doing that, basically purely for understanding technology and a desire to understand technology. When I was in India, I volunteered to serve in a very, very underserved area. Like there was literally like no electricity, no advanced technology that you can think about. And I was the only woman physician in like a very big catchment area around that. So to give you a scale, I used to do a delivery of like 20 deliveries in a day kind of scale, right? So it was crazy. When I came to US, there was a desire to understand technology and see, because I have seen the other side very recently, and I wanted to understand technology. I enrolled in master's in, while I was doing my residency in Emily, I enrolled in master's in informatics program at School of Health Related Profession at that time, and then became a faculty because at Rutgers for a short duration, there was a need to incorporate more technology and electronic medical record at that time. And while I was doing that, it was very clear to me to have an impact. I need to understand the complex US healthcare system. So I went in, actually, Rutgers sponsored my master's in public health at Columbia. And I went in, I did my master's in public health in Columbia. And this was just purely a desire to understand how to navigate and how does different value flow within the healthcare system. And thereon, like I have taken multiple corporate jobs from health insurance, again to medtech at GE, and finally ended up in biotech and pharma industry. So I've been with Sanofi, Allergan. 3 years back, I started thinking about that it's time to do my own story, and I need to try out something of my own. And I started my own company. So honored to be here.
Thank you. I love it. And Kim, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Oh my goodness, so many interesting journeys on this panel. So I grew up in New York City in East Harlem. I went to a really, really kind of strange and eclectic school, which completely prepared me for not a whole lot other than knowing that I really wanted to leave New York and see something else. So I went to Stanford undergraduate, and like many of the stories people here are telling about their parents, I really wanted to study journalism. My parents all said, "Wait, what? No, you need to go find a job." So I ended up studying classics, which was equally useful. I studied archaeology of all things, and came out. I knew I wanted to go to law school, and I went to Rutgers Newark while working full time at Prudential Insurance Company, which is where I was first introduced to all sorts of financial products. That bug stayed with me, so I worked in banking as a lawyer for a while, and always as in-house counsel. Kind of found myself in a little bit of a rut. I was more of a generalist. I really wanted to be more of a specialist. And somewhere around year, 10 or whatever it was into all of this, I met and married somebody who was a serial entrepreneur, who, when I came home from work one day in tears because I couldn't figure out what I was going to do next, he said, "Well, if you don't like what you're doing, just start your own company." And I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, "Well, we got to eat. What are you talking about? I don't understand." And, he finally won me over, and I started my own law firm about the point at which I was pregnant with my youngest child. I had signed my first contract and fell in love with being an outside general counsel for all kinds of wonderful financial services companies, founder-run companies all, which was a really, really unique opportunity. ran that out for about 10 years and then decided what's next. And I decided that I was tired of hustling for clients a little bit, but I still wanted the interesting clients that I had. So I became a consultant and then ended up going back in-house to JP Morgan, and dealing with clients that were a lot like my clients in private practice. So I get to deal with all kinds of really interesting infrastructure projects and ESG projects. I'm actually moving on to a more private equity focused fund in just a little while. But in terms of not being linear, I think that's been the biggest probably highlight of my career and my journey. I also stopped out for a little while to study systems engineering because I too had the technology bug, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about what was under the hood. So I stopped out of my legal career for about 2 years, studied systems engineering at the University of Maryland, and came back into a more technology focused part of the legal department. So here I am. That's my journey, and that's the thumbnail sketch.
I love it. And what's so interesting is every single one of you has had a stint in entrepreneurship, as have I, which is really interesting. And I think just it says something about the spirit of a lot of women out there right now with the current structure and expectations in a corporate environment, coupled with the expectations of gender distribution of work at home. One of the things that I'm sure everyone's had throughout their career is we talk a lot at the center about role modeling and the importance of mentors and sponsors. And, we just created a whole video series for Women's History Month of She Looks Like Me. And so I'd love for each of you to talk, maybe Kim, start with you, talk about some of the, influences throughout your career, or just one influence throughout your career that really stands out, either from a mentor, a sponsor, or a role model.
So there have been a lot. I mean, I wish I could name so many of them, but I'll pinpoint one in particular. So when I first started at Prudential Insurance, I had been out of college for a couple of years. I knew I wanted to go to law school, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with my legal education. And I hemmed and I hawed and I chewed over it. And my senior boss, who was in the general investments division at Prudential, I sat in her office one day and I said, look, I don't know how I want this to go. I don't know what this one to do. I don't know if I can do this and work full time and fulfill all the things I think I want to fulfill. And she just looked me in the face and she said, you know what, if you're coming in here and you're talking about it, you can do it. And she was willing to put her weight behind sponsoring my application. At that point, Prudential had a program where if you were willing to work for them full time, they would pay for your legal education. But the caveat was that you had to work for them full time and really put your effort into it. And so she was willing to sponsor me. She was willing to take a chance on me. And she was my biggest advocate for the 4 years that I was going through the program. And without her, just looking me in the face and saying, yeah, you can do this, I think I would have lost my nerve. So wherever she is, Mary Kavanaugh, I have a big debt of gratitude that I owe you.
I love that. And Amy, what about you? Has there been anybody in particular that's been a big influence on your career journey?
I would say in the early days from coming out of undergrad business school and trying to plan a career in banking, I really didn't have that. I didn't grow up in an environment where my mother worked or women had careers or anything like that. I never had that around me. So I spent a lot of time, being an only or sort of observing and learning things about what made people successful. And I always used to hate that question because I wanted a mentor. I wanted somebody who took me under their wing and said, let me help steward your career in banking or Wall Street. And I never had that. But I think on the positive side is that I wasn't modeling myself after anyone. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is the way it has to be, because there wasn't. I was cobbling bits and bobs together from people that I thought were successful or what felt right to me or felt like the right thing to do for me. So I think that was good. When I got into philanthropy for the last several years, I think Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland, is probably the biggest influence. you know, she has a great and interesting history. She was a High Commissioner for Human Rights. She's been an unapologetically fabulous mother, grandmother, head of state, UN High Commissioner, and she continues to work now with the elders and things like that. And she really provided me a different perspective and a paradigm shift on things that I had been doing that I thought I was doing really well at. And she just gave me this human rights lens that fundamentally changed the way I looked at everything else. So I would honor her support on that.
I love that. And I think you brought up a really great point. I love looking at silver linings. So the fact that, you know, there wasn't anyone that maybe looked like you in the roles you were occupying, you looked at that as actually a positive to say, I have the space, I have this white space to create the authenticity of me as in this role. And it's not scary, but I can do whatever I want to do in this role because it doesn't exist right now.
To be clear, that is only in hindsight.
Right, no.
In my 20s and 30s, I was absolutely not thinking that. So this is, I don't want somebody who's watching to think, oh, great, I would have all this courageous thing to just forge ahead on my own, because that is a really difficult and scary thing. But in hindsight, if I can offer support and encouragement for people who are feeling the same, you will trudge through and you will, you know, you will pick up things that are really meaningful and important. And as your career develops, you'll learn how to fit those puzzle pieces in.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I had a similar experience when I first started out in investment banking, you know, in the 90s. The hardest part of my job was figuring out the names of all the other analysts in my class because they all looked the same. And it was just me, the brunette, and my roommate, the blonde. And that was it. There were no other women. And so it was kind of scary. And I think this is a good segue. You know, I can't remember what the statistic is, but it might be 75% or more of women suffer from what folks call imposter syndrome. And the higher up we get, the more of a fake a lot of folks think that they are, which is kind of interesting because the more proven that you've done in your own experience, the more insecure you become. And so what I would love to learn from you all is, and Shaudra, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. You know, do you have any hacks? Like what have you done? Because you've all been the only one. You're in finance, you're in medicine, you're in law, you know, the only one who looks like you in that room. How have you tried to, you know, get over yourself and then take advantage of that situation?
You know, again, as Amy said, sometimes in hindsight, it's easier. It looks easier and it's not
right.
You're in situation, right? So first of all, I want to just have this message out that although you're listening to this may sound very smooth and easy and interesting. It is tough when you are in that situation, right? One thing which was there, since I was different in so many aspects, right? Different culture at that time, you know, gender, of course, color, education, everything was different. I said, you know what? If I start thinking about how to fit in, I'll never be able to do that. So let me just be what I am. So I think that was the first thing. I never, ever tried just because there was so many adversity. I decided, let me just be what I am. And one advantage that gave me was, so that was my confidence, right? And I'm just going to be so knowledgeable and I'll do my homework. I mean, again, didn't come naturally, right? But before every meeting, I would really do my homework well. I mean, you know, I will even practice what I'm going to say, right? And I'll even practice that if somebody is going to interrupt, what am I going to say, right? Because that happened a lot as well, right? And I was also at that time youngest sometimes in the leadership role. So it did require some effort. I mean, there was deliberate effort, but I gave up trying to fit in. That was one thing. And there was an advice given to me by someone, at what all places you are going to try to fit in. So I said, yeah, that's true, actually. So let me just not try to fit in. So I think, you know, your knowledge and, you know, your conviction is what should drive you. Once you have that, then I think, and you think that you're more prepared, it's like being prepared for exam, right? Then I think a lot of things you can easily overcome. And that's one advice I give, just don't try to fit in. Try to be yourself and just lead by knowledge and what you are, you know.
I love that. I love that. Robin, what about you? What are some hacks that that you found, maybe even in hindsight, where you realized you were the only one in the room?
Yeah, I think being in venture is definitely not, I didn't come in through the traditional path, right? I came from being an educator, and also I worked in the Valley, but I didn't go to, like Berkeley or Stanford, where most people have a lot of these connections. And like Xiaojian, like definitely still have that sometimes, right? It's like, of course we still have imposter syndrome. And but I think it like one thing that really helped is just not only just embracing yourself, but like embracing the craft and like show your passion. I think if you're really interested in the work that you do, everyone around you will notice. And I think that's infectious. A lot of our founders and people that I come across, like it is they're not your friend, but like it is a partner and somebody that like you're gonna continue to spend a lot of time with and work together. And so every minute that you're trying to act like you belong is a minute you could spend time, building on, reading on stuff about your work or diving in. And I think one of the really lucky things about the position that I'm in is that like it actually works in your favor to be different, right? Like if everybody thought that like this deal was a great deal, then the herd mentality, right, or like the conviction you have is not necessarily your own perspective. And the times that you probably make the most money and the best deals are the ones that people don't see or get in at the time that you get in. So yeah, for me, trying to kind of think about that and not think too much about why comparing myself to somebody else at a different firm or somebody even in my own firm.
No, I think that's a great point, is focusing on the work. I know that's not easy to do all the time. But I think that is a good strategy. Kim, how have you throughout your career dealt with imposter syndrome, being an only? What are some of the things that you've done for yourself to help you?
I think, and again, this is going to be hot.
Or help others realize.
Or help others. Again, hindsight is 2020. I'll preface this with that. I think for me, there were times in my life where I did resent being the only. There is a lot of, I come from a very closely knit family and a very closely knit community. And, you walk around with the weight of your family and your race and your culture and your everything on your shoulders. Don't embarrass yourself, make us proud. And these are just sort of written sort of messages that have been embedded in the back of your head. My mother would be proud to hear me saying that. I was listening, Mom. But you do at some point have to turn off the noise a little bit. And as people have said, you've got to be yourself. And that's a sort of an oversung message, but you have to figure out what that means for you. And stop trying to fit in and stop trying to, now you have to know the road rules, how you have to know the game you're playing, right? You have to come prepared, all of those things, right? But understand sometimes that if you're there, right, as a woman, as a person of color, wherever you come from, whatever history you bring with you, you're there because you deserve to be. And having to remind yourself from time to time, nobody like walked up to me and said, hey, you know what? Here, have this career. This is great. You earned this, right? And so sometimes having to take a deep breath and say, I'm here because I'm supposed to be. I earned this. That's okay. The other hack I think is in the being yourself is my natural inclination is to lead with the joke no matter what. And sometimes I kind of felt awkward, because everybody else is being very serious and very grave and very, and I'm coming in and I'm like, did you see this? Not, I have no like inclination or desire or need to be serious. And so when I realized like I have to lead with me, I have to, and people find it disarming. They've even in situations that are super tense, not inappropriate, but like just that, like, okay, let's a minute, let's take a deep breath. And you'll find every shoulders kind of lowering in the room. And so I find that, I can, if I come with myself, if I lead with what's strongest, everybody else takes a step back and a breath too, and everybody gets human and everybody calms the head down. And that has kind of served me well in some of the harder situations. It's hard to do. Sometimes you do feel awkward and out of place, but just from like, I'm here because I'm supposed to be. And this is okay. This is not brain surgery. You can do this. And that has helped me through life. So I'll stop ranting there.
No, I think that's really important. It's not brain surgery unless you're Chandra, and then maybe you are operating on people. But I think that's great. I think, if that's within your authentic persona, like the jokes is a great equalizer and de-escalator. And then on top of that, the confidence to know that nobody is hiring you because of how you look. It is not like nobody can handle, there's not enough money in a company's budget to hire dead weight. They're hiring you because you're smart and you're qualified, and maybe you're bringing a different perspective because of your background or your prior experiences. I think a lot of the hacks I've used, actually, I was an athlete all growing up and in college, and a lot of my hacks come from sports. And realizing that, the founder of Girls Who Code wrote this book, Brave, Not Perfect. And be brave. It's okay to fail. Failing, like our coach used to say, I was a gymnast, our coach used to say, every time you fall, it means you're getting better. Every time you make a mistake, it means you're getting better. And we used to listen to these motivational tapes that said, I am a good gymnast. I am a good gymnast. I am a good gymnast. And the voice escalated 3 times. So they were supposed to be these meditation things. This is, like 30, 40 years ago, before meditation was a thing. And, by the end, you're like, okay, I'm good. You're like, I like this. And so I started doing that at work. When I was an analyst, I was like, I am a good investment banker. I am a good investment banker. Damn it, I'm a great investment, and try to like convince myself that, and realize that all these folks, and I grew up with no money either. Like we were on food stamps at one point. And so it was really intimidating to be around all these people, especially in college too, that had a lot more wealth than I had. And so realize that, you know what? They put on their pants the same way. They, have to walk the same way. There's nothing different. And I have every right to be here as somebody else. And that takes a long time. And like you all have said, it's much easier to look back and realize that than when you're going through the moment. And so I think it's important for all of us to stop and pause. Robin, you touched on something earlier, and it might've been before we even jumped on. And Amy, I think you had talked about it as well. A lot of times it's called work-life balance. And, then balance means everything's equal. Then the concept evolved to work-life integration, meaning you can ebb and flow it. At the center at Rutgers, the Center for Women in Business, we've coined a term work-life overlap, because especially during COVID, everything is happening at the same time, at the same place, simultaneously. I don't know if you saw my son, I had to put myself on mute. He's like, what's for lunch, Mom? I was like, I don't know, you're almost 15 years old. Go look in the fridge. I'm on a webinar. So, and your dad's upstairs. So go ask him. So Robin, you are sitting here 2 weeks before you're about to have a baby. Thank you for not having the baby, so you could still do this with us. How are you, how do you ensure that you're managing all of this, not just for you, but for your career, for your family, and what are you doing? I know you have a partner, with your partner, et cetera.
Yeah, we were definitely talking about this in terms of like, what, is there a balance? Is it overlap? And I think for me, like work and life are it's part of your life, right? It's just who you are. It's just another sliver. And so I think for me, especially having my first about 2 years ago, and then now having my second, and it's a lot about like different priorities at different point in times and different parts of the day. I've actually most recently, maybe about 3 months ago, was the first time I actually blocked off chunks of my calendar to be like block time for Adrian, which is my son. I was like really hesitant to do that before. I thought that like, oh, I need to be always on at work. I need to do every meeting possible, like fill out my schedule, right? Like, cause that's how my day looks like, 13 meetings a day, right? But like, I realized, hey, no, you know what? I need to make time for me, and I need to make time for my family. And if it takes doing that on my calendar, then I block it, and people are respectful. I think we're starting to see a lot of change where companies and managers, especially I think with COVID, it really changed things. Because the men, our male colleagues, are at home and they realize like, hey, I need to help out too, and like I need to block off time. And they realize like, oh, she needs 2 hours to like make dinner and feed her son and give him a bath and put him to bed, and she'll sign back on later as long as you get your work done. It's totally fine. And we're starting to see that both like internally amongst other firms, as well as encouraging our companies to do this as well. And so I would say I'm not doing it all, but working at it. And luckily, I have a support network. Like my husband's super supportive. He works from home too, and so he totally gets it. And we do different trade-offs.
So I think that's really key. And the trade-offs. It's not. I think culturally, it's not that men are helping. Like I'm trying to tweak the vocabulary in my own house. You're not helping me with the childcare. You are sharing in the childcare. These are your kids too. Like they're half of you. Sometimes they're more than half of you when they're not behaving the way I want them to, right? So you need to share. You're not helping, right? You're not the babysitter. So I think that's really important to think about as well. Amy, I know you had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I'll show my age. I mean, I think every parenting relationship is different, and the agreements that you set and make in your home are different. I agreed to be the primary caregiver, full stop. There was no tweaking the language here.
Right.
We had a division of labor, and that's how life is. And I want to honor that, because however a family or parenting arrangement determines what you're going to do, that's great. I have been a super proud, mom, stay-at-home mom in some ways and things like that. And I chose that. I was very proud of being the lead on that parenting role. So, probably on one hand to too much extremes where I never asked for help, and I probably burned myself out a little bit. But there's a lot of different roads to take on this journey. But for me, and again, it was a while back, I agree with what Robin is saying. I think things are changing dramatically. And I actually do agree that COVID is helping them change. But certainly 25 years ago, you were supposed to have this beautiful balance. You were supposed to look fabulous at work and somehow be breastfeeding and somehow be a perfect wife when your husband's company had a cocktail party. There was just all these different roles that you were expected to fill and somehow juggle. And I don't believe there was open conversation about how difficult that is. And it's really not a balance. You've got to take priorities and you've got to make choices. And there's going to be things that get more time, and there's going to be things that get less time. And whether it's your kids get less time because I traveled a lot, or I had to make a choice in my career because there wasn't enough hours in the day to be a success at all these things. I think those are the conversations that I like to hear women having with each other, and sharing the I don't want to even say intergenerational because we're all the same, but just sharing the conversations about and being honest and open about the fact that I didn't balance this. I had to make incredibly difficult choices to be away from my children, to advance my career. And I was fortunate that when I got to a position where that trade-off became too much for me, I could stop working in that space, which was a wonderful benefit that so many women don't have. But I think as friends and colleagues, we need to, and whether you can talk to your manager about these kinds of things, when you start talking about, diversity is one thing, but equity and inclusion means, and you can talk to your boss about these kinds of things. I could have never brought up work-life balance or gee, I'd like a little more time. I mean, I would have never even breached that subject with my boss. So finding a space among colleagues, women or otherwise, frankly, where you can have an honest conversation about how difficult it is to make those choices. And those days when you're living with the consequences of, your kid says, I never see you, or your boss is consistently frustrated at work. How are we living with that tension and that stress, and how are we supporting each other? I just want to be open and authentic about those kinds of things, because there are absolutely beautiful moments. And thankfully, I think we all have a good bit of amnesia so that we don't remember the worst ones, or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
But yeah, I like to be really push the dialogue, to be honest about the fact that there isn't really much balance. It's making tough choices and then learning to live with them.
Amy, you have so many good points right in there. One of which is there's no right answer. So, and I tell that to my students, you have no idea whether you're a man or a woman. I know people who this baby came and they said, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. And this baby came and they said, oh my God, get me to work as fast as you possibly can. And then other people who are like, I am going to run this company and I'm going to get to the top and have a C in my title. And then this baby came and they were like, oh my God, I can't even imagine leaving this precious thing for 1 second. And so there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no distribution that's perfect. It's only what's right for you and your family. So I think that point is really important. And 25, 30 years ago, I remember even 15 years ago having conversations with employers as I was trying to transition, saying, by the way, I have a full child care support system. Don't worry, kitchen closed, not having any more kids. Like, I'm good. And trying to say, to cut it in the chase, because they looked at me and they're like, oh, she's going to pop out more babies. She's going to leave us. And trying to nip that conversation in the bud. And so I think all of that is changing, which is good, but we're not totally there yet. And having that open dialogue. And then there's one other thing where you can't do it all. I think I've heard that a couple times. So I met my husband in grad school, and we both had Oprah Winfrey teach this course. I mean, it was like incredible. It's like different story, but like totally fabulous. But she said a couple things. And one point that she said during class, it was a class on leadership, that totally resonated with me was, you can do it all. You can't do it all at the same time. And then defining, and then I added a little asterisk, defining what that all is very different for each one of us. And again, there's no right answer. And I think that's really, really important. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to get to at least a couple other questions. Kim, I want to start with you. What is the best advice you've ever given somebody?
Best advice I've ever given somebody else.
Yeah. Or that you've gotten yourself.
Or I've gotten myself. I would say the best advice I've ever gotten was from a former manager. And, I was one of those folks who came into work saying, I'm just going to do a women's stereotype. I'm just going to do a great job. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to work, and by golly, I'm going to get this. And I guess the advice I was given was read the room. And what they meant by that was, as much as you think you want to stay away from company politics and information and everything else, you can't not. You have to open yourself up to what's going on around you. And I resisted, I rebelled, I was furious. I wanted to, but you have to get a sense of the flow around you. And until I got that, I hit my head against a lot of walls. So, be aware, understand that you're going to have to immerse yourself into the flow of other people and how they relate to each other and the information that they give. And, you don't have to be a toxic personality, but you whether you've got clients, whether you've got coworkers or whatever else, you are going to have to be a political animal, and you are going to have to be a part of that flow.
No, I think that's really important. Shaudra, best advice.
Yeah, so the best advice that I got, I'll tell about that. Very early on in my career, one of my mentors at that time advised that you should never, whenever opportunities come with, people are blessed if it comes to you, and it does come sometimes you don't realize. So never say no randomly to anything because of your obvious constraints, right? Like sometimes, oh my God, like I'm, going to be thinking about starting a family. I can't just take that, because there's always sometimes when you look back a way out to work around it or come up with a blend in. I call it like a work-life blend in rather than a balance, because I really blended my personal life, and I'm not at all shy or about that. Most of the people who work with me know my child very well, and all his stories too. So I think that was one of the advice I got early on, and that has helped me a lot. I'll just very quickly share a story. When I was doing my master's in public health at Columbia, one of my professors at that time said, I would like to hire you at Aetna. And I said, what is Aetna? I had no idea. He said, well, it's really important to understand, how the payment systems happen and whatnot. I said, oh, that sounds interesting. Okay. I think I don't know much about it, but I would love to learn. It seems like if I have to, do something in healthcare, I need to understand that. And I took a leap. And at that time, I was faculty at Rutgers. So I think little bit of a calculated understanding, risk-taking appetite, and looking at opportunity with an open mindset is the best advice that was given to me. So
no, I think that's really important. And I think a lot of times, it's yes, and so fine, I'll do this. And here's what I'm going to need in order to accomplish that. This is what I need from you.
absolutely.
Awesome. Robin. I'm gonna give this to all of you, by the way.
I definitely agree. Like I was gonna say, staying open-minded was mine in terms of advice. But I would say one other one that I kind of live by, and something that my parents have always taught me, was like devote all your effort wholeheartedly without calculating which side does more or gain more. I think, put all your effort into everything that you do, and things will, there's always stones that get uncovered, relationships that you end up building. It's not about like who's winning or not at that given moment. And I think my best relationships and my best, whether it's work or professional or personal, has always come from this. So.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And those relationships that you build, you never know, the world is so small, how they keep coming back. So now basically everybody that I've worked with at a different stage of my career has been a guest lecturer in my class. So, they're all coming back, and I'm giving them to my students for the next generation to understand what folks do every day at work. Amy, best advice.
I'll be quick. The best advice I ever received was when everyone else is shortening their timelines, extend yours. Meaning there's very few things in life that are really, really a crisis. Most of them are problems or challenges to be solved, and you want to bring your best self and you want to do the right thing. And so when everybody else is sort of panicking and churning and shortening their timelines, many with artificial deadlines, really work to extend yours. Take a breath, take the moment to bring your best self. Because that's going to be the best answer. And it sounds so simple. It's not that easy to do, but really when everybody else is shortening their timelines, extend yours. And the best advice I would be to give someone is similar to what Robin said, is to be graceful. It's, they define grace as unmerited favor. We all need it, and we should give it a lot more than we do. It's certainly easy for those of us, especially perhaps in analytical careers, to be cynical or to be judgmental or to analyze everything. But as Robin said, I think it's just better to give grace and be graceful, because there are times when we've received this and we really needed it. And there's so much more that we can give if we're giving in the moment and we're sharing in the moment. And so I always tell people to give the grace that you wish you received. I wouldn't be here today without the grace of so many people in two different careers. So I always try to, when I get hyper analytical or who deserves or what promotion is appropriate, I kind of harken back to what Robin said and, try to give the grace you wish you received.
Amy, I might borrow that. Give the grace you wish to receive. I love that. It's very, very powerful and keeps it in perspective. Somebody else told me recently as well, assume folks' intentions are good. So as folks are trying to evolve on their own journeys, especially with respect to inclusion, assume that they're coming from a place, and then let's help each other get there even further, as opposed to the opposite. Okay, I want to have some fun now. So you all are affiliated with Rutgers in one way or the other. Some currently even more involved, and some, you went to school here. What is your favorite RU memory? Robin.
My favorite was going abroad. I was lucky enough to do the study abroad program my senior year, and I went to Florence. So got to spend time there. It was like my first time away from home since I commuted to school 20 minutes away, and felt, it really opened my eyes to the rest of the world, and really set the, I think, with Rutgers giving me that opportunity to do that, really set the stage for my career too, just because we're global investors. And ever since then, I've been traveling a lot more, living abroad in different places. And so really love that about Rutgers.
And you were an art history major too, right? What better place?
Exactly.
Awesome. Kim, favorite RU memory? You were in law school, so maybe they aren't also favorite, but
I was going to say that there's a little bit of a caveat on that, but I had some amazing professors, and I had some really great opportunities. I actually got the opportunity to be a teaching assistant and to work with some of the first years when I was I can't remember, it was the second year or third year. So I got to work with a terrific law professor, George Thomas. If you think that your professors don't remember you, I think I worked with him 2 years after I was a first year, and I came in the first day to work with him, and he looked at me and he said, you took my class, whatever semester it was. He goes, you fell asleep during your presentation, didn't you? It's like, yes, Professor Thomas, thank you.
I was just, I was working really hard on it the night before. Yeah. I love that. Shaudra, favorite RU memory?
So I have so much to thank Rutgers.
You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, my first education here in US, my first job, that to getting a faculty job right after graduating. I have a lot to thank. I did not understand the concept of grant or research, frankly speaking, right? I was just a healthcare provider, that's about it. So how I was blessed to do a work in the autism area and understand the profound impact that research can have. So I would say the opportunities that Rutgers has given me, and my time that's spent as a research assistant in Rutgers, those have been my favorite times there. I didn't have that concept, of doing a big research in an area which is so much needed. So
awesome, thank you. And Amy, favorite RU memory?
Mine would be when I met Dr. Richard Marling, who came from Harvard to start the Rutgers Global Health Institute. So much of my work is around global health and things like that. And I felt that if this university can attract and hire and stand up this Global Health Institute, and we had so much in common and so many people and colleagues. And so I just kind of felt as a non-alum and serving in different ways, I kind of found this warm corner of a huge public university that I could relate to. So meeting and working with Rick has been terrific.
I love that. I love that. Thank you all. So the last question I want to ask, it is Women's History Month. International Women's Day was #ChoosetoChallenge. It takes all of us to challenge inequities. Tomorrow is not only Rutgers Giving Day, but it's Equal Pay Day. It took 83 days into 2021 for a woman to earn as much as her male counterpart. If you are a Black woman, it's going to take even longer. If you are a Latina or Hispanic woman, it's going to take even longer than that. So we all have to choose to challenge to get to equity, and equality. So I'm going to start just where I see you all on my screen. How are you each choosing to challenge? Kim.
Choosing to challenge, one of the things that initiatives I'm working on right now at work is mentoring students who are second years and third years coming out of school, going into their law firms, and teaching them, aside from the business of practicing law, how to negotiate your salary, what you need to look forward to going down the line, setting yourself up for success, no matter whether you decide you want to go law firm route, partner route, or start your own business, how to negotiate.
That's great. That was such a great layup. On April 23rd, our center is going to host another webinar on Know Your Worth. How do you know if you're getting paid appropriately? How do you negotiate? How do you find out? Thanks for the plug, even though we didn't even know it was going to happen. That's great. Shaudra, how are you choosing to challenge?
Yes, so I have chosen to challenge by challenging the unconscious gender, but cultural bias as well. Oftentimes the culture that I come from, the women, if they are quiet and timid, that's looked at as, oh, she doesn't want to do enough in her career because look, she was just sitting quietly. She did not have an opinion. So I want to challenge that biases that we make and the stereotypes that we create in our mind, because that's not often the case. If the person, it took me a lot of effort to speak up in many of the meetings when I initially started doing that, because there was no one around like me. So I want to challenge that thinking that we have. And I want all the women out there to take this message, especially women of color and different culture, that, your knowledge, your conviction, your passion, as we all said, that should be guiding you. Have confidence. And for those who are sitting on the other side, just because somebody is quiet does not mean that that person doesn't know. Give them a platform, make it a safe harbor for everybody to talk. So that's what I'm challenging.
I love that. My husband works in finance, and he came home, this was a while ago before COVID, and said, we were at this meeting, and this is my behavioral lab at home, and said, there was one woman and she didn't say anything. I was like, well, did you call on her? He's like, no, she should just know. I was like, no, she doesn't feel comfortable because all of you other folks are around and are loud and getting in. I said, it's your responsibility to pull her into the conversation. So I love that one on a personal note as well. Robin, how are you choosing to challenge?
Continue to invest in women. So one of the companies that I work with really closely, I am a member, but also work closely on the board level, is Chief. So I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's an organization built specifically for senior executive women and empowering them to hone their leadership skills and cross-pollinate across different industries and work together with each other. They now have over 4,000 women in the community. And one of the most recent things I did with the community was working with our portfolio and matching them with the senior execs for board roles. So placing more women on boards, getting more exposure to the cause and to the community is something that I spend a lot of time on.
No, it's really important. NASDAQ, I know NASDAQ has the whole initiative of requiring to get women and underrepresented minorities on boards as well, or you have to come up with a good reason why you couldn't figure that out. So I love that. And, I know I do a case in my class, less than 3% of the capital for venture goes to women, and even less to women of color. So really important initiative. Amy, how are you choosing to challenge?
Well, I have, sort of a really strong opinion. Don't ever ask me to lean in or try harder again. It's completely, absolutely insulting, because similar to what Shaudra said, I spent my whole life trying to work harder and be smarter just in case. So, don't ever ask me to lean in. If you're sitting at the table, pull up a chair. If you're standing at the podium, pass the mic. If you have funds, invest them in other people. Do not expect me as a woman or anyone else in a minority to solve the problems you created. It's just, let's be honest about this. To ask a woman or a woman of color or any any discriminated minority to chair something, to lead something, to fix something that we've been a victim of, I'm done. I'm done not calling it out. So my challenge is to always make sure those of us who do have seats at the table, create extra chairs, pass the mic, make the investment, and don't expect people to solve problems that we created or others created.
I couldn't have said that better myself. And I am going to close with that because it was very powerful. Thank you all for participating. Happy Women's History Month. We should not try to keep advancing and striving towards equality just during Women's History Month, just during Black History Month, just during Hispanic Heritage Month. Like, these should be things that we're doing all year long. And these months should just be reminders of how much more we still need to do. So thank you all for participating. It was a pleasure. I hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much.